During the 50s, the United States of America was not a welcoming place for those who had dark skin. Segregation ruled the country along with violence and missing rights. White people and black people were treated completely differently. The first group living the American dream and the second group only seeing it on TV as if they lived in a different world. Police violence was also in its peak, only making this country's safety even smaller.
I've been walking with my face turned to the sun.
Wait, right here. Segregation is now illegal in this country, sir.
Weight on my shoulders, a bullet in my gun.
There is no bathroom.
Oh, I got eyes in the back of my head.
Or any building outside the West Campus, which is
just in case I have to run.
The land of the free and the home of the brave.
But contradicting those society's expectations, things were bound to change.
Go back to Alabama, go back to South Carolina, go back to Georgia, go back to Louisiana, go back to the slums and ghettos of our northern cities. Knowing that somehow this situation can and will be changed. Let us not wallow in the valley of despair. I say to you today, my friend, so even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream.
In 1954, following their leading figures and inspired by visionaries like Martin Luther King Jr., the black community arose in protest, demanding their rights and the end of segregation. It was in the middle of this fight for equality that remarkable personalities appeared, such as Maya Angelou. Maya believed and agreed with Martin Luther King Jr., also wanting equality and safety for everyone in her community. Not only that, but her protests were not violent, but made from art, like poetry. Both authors used their voices as their main weapons and gained popularity and attention for their beautiful words. It is not hard to understand how they both became such important figures during their time. Maya Angelou was born in Missouri on April 4, 1928, and became a worldwide famous author, poet, dancer, singer, activist, and scholar. Her most famous trait was her unique and pioneering autobiographical writing style. During her life, she achieved a lot of things, such as becoming the first African-American woman to work as a streetcar conductor in San Francisco, being an active participant in the civil rights movement, and having her book, I Know What the Caged Bird Sings, being nominated for the National Book Award. She also won several Grammys for her poetry and was the first African-American woman to have her screenplay turned into a film. After accomplishing many other things and being considered an inspirational figure, Maya died in 2014, leaving an entire legacy of fighting for freedom.
Still I Rise is one of Maya Angelou's most famous poems. It is the third volume by poetry published by the Random House in 1978. It comprises 32 short poems that discusses the hope and determination of black people to rise above hardships and racism. Still I Rise is Angelou's favorite poem from the series and one of the volume's most well-known poems. Still I Rise was so impactful that Nelson Mandela read this poem at his 1999 inauguration, after having spent 27 years in jail. It goes something like, "You may write me down in history with your bitter twisted lies. You may throw me in the dirt, but still, like dust, I rise. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with my gloom? 'Cause I walk like I've got oil wells pumping in my living room.
Just like moons and like suns, with the certainty of tides, just like hopes springing high, still arise. Did you want to see me broken, bowed head and lowered eyes, shoulders falling down like teardrops, weakened by my soulful cries?"
Besides its beautiful message and words, The poem is also brilliant because of its uses of language, figure of speech, and metaphors. The poem is in such a way with 32 stanzas with 4 verses each, besides the last one that repeats I rise 5 times. Also, the pleonasm of the phrase still I rise, I'll rise, and I rise stand for an important message and use in this case, because during the poem, Maya talks about struggles black people deal with daily and intersect those phrases to show that black people rise besides all challenges and difficulties. It is also impossible not to notice the rhymes present in most of stanzas being structured as XA, where the second and fourth verses rhyme. Another important aspect of it is the use of figure of speech. Throughout the whole poem, we can see the use of metaphors, such as you may shoot me with your words, and you may write me down in history, to make a parallel between what's being said and what's happening. Also, the comparison is really present in the poem on because I laugh like I've got gold mines, and that I dance like I've got diamonds, working just like metaphors but directly. Between other uses are what make this poem brilliant.
Still Rise is not only brilliant, but is also inspiring and empowering. The poem talks about the struggle that Black people encountered during the 20th century to overcome prejudice and injustice, even after the slavery abolition. Written by Maya Angelou, the poem was based on her experiences as a Black woman in America. The title of the poem, Still Arise, is a proclamation against the society that tries to dominate the speaker's voice. Maya, in this case, uses something called African American English that, in the poem, makes the speaker not only represent a Black woman, but the Black community as a whole that decides not only to face but also to question a certain oppressor. This oppressor, addressed through all as you, is full of bitter twisted lies and hatefulness toward the speaker, and hopes to see her broken in both body and spirit. However, despite all the methods of the oppressor to shut, cut, or kill her, the speaker remains defined by continuing to rise in triumph. The message that Maya wanted to pass with this poem is loud and clear. No matter the cruelty, regardless of the method and circumstance, the victim will rise up. When read by victims of wrongdoing, the poem becomes a kind of anthem, a beacon of hope and a present of downtrodden. Once it encourages readers to love themselves fully and persevere in the face of every hardship, the poem Still Rise is not only a proclamation of the determination to rise above the society, but it was also a call to others to live above the society in which they were brought up. Racism is still alive, and many people still have to deal with daily. That is why figures such as Maya are still necessary to open doors and spread important and timeless messages around the world and decades. Individuals like this are responsible for fighting for them people and making them all rise up together.
I do what I can when I can, while I can for my people. While the clouds roll back and the stars fill the night, that's when I'm gonna stand up, take my people with me. Together we are going to a brand new home, far across the river. Can you hear freedom calling, calling me to answer? Gonna keep on keeping on. I can feel it in